we've grown up in a society where we accept our slow deterioration.
Correct.
We don't treat the human body as it's created, as it's designed to function.
When we're looking at a patient with the personalised medicine lens, we're not just focused on one symptom or one system. How are all their systems functioning?
All of this is engineering health. It's why we became doctors, to make people healthier, give them a better experience of life. I want to get this out as a doctor to other patients and other people.
100%.
Welcome to another episode of Humans at Human. I am so pleased to have our medical director, Dr. Nirusha Kumaran, with us today, and we're going to be diving deep into functional medicine, personalized medicine, and how we've created the human methodology and the results that we're getting to transform people's health states here at Human. Nirusha, how are you today?
Good, thank you.
Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your journey.
My journey into lifestyle functional medicine started back in 2019. I did the diploma with the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine. I was really intrigued to kind of identify how we could help a large community of people in this country struggling with lifestyle-related medical conditions, cardiometabolic conditions. But after I did that diploma, I felt like there'd be more. There's more to this. I wanted to dig deeper. I then had my second daughter in the pandemic in 2020, and soon after birth, she was diagnosed with really severe eczema, head to toe covered in eczema. We really struggled to get on top of it, despite having multiple courses of potent topical steroids. So I wanted to dig deeper for her health and to try and help her health holistically. So I looked into food allergies, and I discovered she had 13 plus food allergies.
Wow.
And kind of looking into how I could help this holistically alongside traditional medicine. So I still worked with her allergy consultants to kind of look at ways of improving the allergy status and improving her skin. I wanted to look at her health holistically. So kind of went into functional medicine that way. And as soon as I did that, my mind was blown. It's just absolutely fascinating to kind of look at the intricacies of how you can improve your gut health and how that's connected to your immune system, and how we can kind of look at ways of improving allergies and the immunity through kind of holistic measures. I really worked with her on her gut health because she was a baby at the time, so receptive to kind of all the supplements I was giving her, and kind of looked into kind of ways of healing her gut ultimately. Over that course of that year, we were able to reduce the total number of her allergies. So she had 13, I would say mild to moderate to severe, out of which we were able to cut that back down to about 6 allergies. And in the last year I've been working, and we've reduced that down to 5 allergies. So these are IgE mediated allergies that we've reduced down in number through working with the functional medicine element.
There's so much to unravel here.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about the human impact. You're a doctor. You've been a doctor for many years now, and you went on this further learning journey before having your second child.
Yeah.
How old is she now?
She's 3.
She's 3. What's her name?
Her name is Shiva.
Shiva.
Yeah.
So I want to really touch on the human impact, because you're both a doctor and then a mother of your daughter Shiva, who head to toe eczema. That must be very uncomfortable for you as a mother, but also for her.
Yeah, it was really like looking back at some of her baby pictures. It can be heartbreaking at times to see kind of what she went through. But, I'm really grateful now that she has kind of, I would say, 95% clear skin. She still gets the tiny flares up now and again. And that's really when I notice that I'm giving her a food that she may be mildly allergic to, but I'm keeping those foods in her diet so that she doesn't develop anaphylaxis later on. But I'm hopeful, again, as I continue kind of all the gut support that I'm providing her, that will continue to improve.
As a doctor, then, how did the traditional healthcare system help you? How did your GP or the pediatrician, the traditional medical approach, help in that?
It was very limited. She was under a dermatologist. She was using potent steroids, so Elicon on a baby is quite strong. She was using Protopic. There wasn't really anything more they could suggest other than, here, treat the skin from the outside.
Symptom management.
Symptom management, exactly.
Yeah. Were you worried about kind of absorption of that steroid internally? And
Absolutely, yeah. Especially the Protopic, because, there are some, there's a very, very low risk of it being connected to certain types of cancer. So, because you're modulating the immune system. So absolutely kind of worried about the kind of systemic absorption of some of these potent creams.
Shiva was ultimately your first patient
In functional medicine,
that you started to apply the knowledge that you'd learned postgraduate.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're working as a GP at the time?
Yeah, well, I was on maternity leave, obviously, when I kind of really went deep into functional medicine, and then returned back to GP post maternity leave, and still work as a GP. But it was very, very eye opening. But she was technically my first patient. I myself was my second patient. So then being able to apply all of these principles that I've learned on my own health was transformational. It was very interesting because one of her allergies was milk. I was breastfeeding at the time, so I gave up dairy because I didn't want to pass it through the breast milk. Within, I would say, a month of giving up dairy, I noticed, oh, my gut's starting to feel better. Oh, I start to feel a bit more energetic. So I was actually diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis back in 2016. The traditional medical approach was, right, here you've got this condition, you're probably going to need to take medication for the rest of your life, your antibodies are this, and kind of go away, get on with it. So postpartum second time round, so I'd obviously given up the dairy, and I was kind of going for my routine thyroid check, and I just asked the GP, oh, can you just check my TPO antibodies? Most GPs wouldn't say yes to that, as you're probably aware.
Yeah, it's not a routine test.
It's not a routine test you do, and kind of when you're diagnosed, the assumption is that your antibodies are just going to remain high. There's nothing you can do to improve that or change that. And thankfully, my GP agreed, and it was really mind-blowing for me because my antibodies were well above 900, and just within a month of kind of applying functional medicine principles into my life, my antibodies were close to 300. So that's like a 600 kind of point reduction in my antibodies. And I was like, oh my God, that's like really amazing. And I feel a lot better as a result of a few simple dietary changes. And for me, then I just carried on with that journey of...
That's right. I mean, that's where the fire in the belly was like, okay, this root cause medicine has an application to improve my health personally, but then I want to get this out as a doctor to other patients and other people.
100%.
Yeah.
I think also for me, when I was digging deeper, I realised that I had really poor gut health, and I think that could have been one of the factors maternally during pregnancy that may have contributed to my daughter's allergies. And I did one of the comprehensive stool test analyses that we offer at HUM2N, and I scored really highly for dysbiosis. So that's the imbalance in the gut microbiome, having an overgrowth of bad bacteria. And again, dietary changes, cutting out refined sugars, carried on staying dairy-free. Within 6 months, I'd completely reversed that as well. So kind of thinking about gut health generally, I'd say 90% of our population will have gut issues that they're not aware about. So there's a high prevalence of something called leaky gut. And again, it was really interesting for me to learn that one of the potential root causes for the development of autoimmunity could be leaky gut, because when the gut barrier is kind of defective, it allows these food proteins and toxins that would otherwise not enter our bloodstream to enter our bloodstream, creating a systemic immune response. And that immune response can lead to autoimmunity. And so again, correcting gut health, I think, was a really kind of fundamental element of improving my overall health.
Absolutely. And I think one of the first patient I started to apply functional medicine to back in 2014 was a Hashimoto's patient. It was a patient that had Hashimoto's thyroiditis. She was seen by some of the world's best endocrinologists and was never explained why she had Hashimoto's. Hashimoto's is an autoimmune condition where you develop antibodies that attack your thyroid gland, so you start to produce less thyroxine, which is your energy currency of your cell. And it's not explained. And this is something that really bugged me as a doctor. It used to really annoy me, is that why can't I explain where these conditions arise from, particularly inflammatory conditions? And that took me personally on a learning journey into functional medicine, into diet and detoxification. Because you go to these conferences and they tell you, okay, we can reverse these conditions. You're like, that's nonsense. The first time I came to these conferences, I was like, impossible. I'm a UK trained physician, trained in the NICE guidelines, which are the cutting edge, best practice guidelines. There is, this can't be real. But curiosity kills the cat, and once someone tells me I find something interesting, we follow up. That's what we share in our kind of, and that's why we're here. And lo and behold, dietary changes, supplements, focused nutritional strategies, and lifestyle strategies, we were able to bring down rapidly those antibodies which are attacking the thyroid, and natural thyroxine increased. as well. The relationship between the digestive tract and hormones became extremely crystal clear, and immune response as well. And where we compartmentalize in traditional medicine, immune system, digestive tract, hormones, and then break down hormones into diabetologists for your blood sugar hormones, thyroid, and other specialists for different types of hormones. We don't treat the human body as it's created, as it's functioning, as it's designed to function. And anyway, so this patient, energy improved, her presence with her children, which is one of the goals that she wanted to improve, her ability to kind of spend more time, quality time with her children improved. She was able to handle her workload a lot better. Resilience improved, immunity, general immunity also improved. All of this is engineering health. This is why I became a doctor. It's why we became doctors, to make people healthier, give them a better experience of life ultimately. And this became the mantra. This became the mantra for me, and also it sounds like the mantra for you as well. Tell us thereafter your journey of applying functional medicine in the UK.
Going back to GP, I quickly became burnt out as a traditional salary GP. And so I took a step back from that and I focused then more on seeing functional medicine patients. When, again, applying functional medicine to the burnout was really interesting because I really focused on improving adrenal function. So as you know, our adrenal glands are these really tiny glands that sit on top of our kidneys and are responsible for producing our stress hormones, so cortisol and also another sex hormone precursor called DHEAS. And so what I realised is, burnout is obviously a dysregulation of your adrenal function. And so kind of going back into really applying those lifestyle principles again, optimising my circadian rhythm, so kind of thinking about my sleep, stress management techniques, so getting back into the meditation, the yoga, and then really thinking about how I can kind of do everything, be a doctor, be a mum, enlisted the help of a health coach. And that kind of really helped set me back onto the right path, kind of really improved my energy levels, and then really kind of delved deeper into functional medicine. So started seeing patients independently to begin with, and now over the last year at HUM2N.
What sticks out to you about this personalised medicine approach versus traditional medicine in terms of the impact that you're having with the patients that you're seeing?
When we're looking at a patient with the personalised medicine lens, as you kind of alluded to, we're not just focused on one symptom or one system. You're really looking at everyone, at kind of their body as a whole. How are all their systems functioning? Is it functioning in harmony? Is something out of sync? Are there any imbalances that need to be addressed? And then secondly, really looking at what is the root cause for why you ended up in this place right here, right now. So kind of really thinking back to their pre-birth history, to what happened around birth and growing up, childhood, and then their adult life as well. And then in addition, thinking about genetic factors, and other factors that could potentially be contributory that we don't actually get time to think about in general practice. I mean, I would love to spend an hour with a patient in general practice to really understand their life story ultimately that's led them to this point. And that's what we don't get in general practice in a traditional medical approach. Whereas in personalised medicine, by understanding that patient's journey and their story, we can really kind of delve deeper into what their concerns are and how we can then apply this kind of root cause analysis to, potentially even reverse some of their concerns, their health concerns, and then actually help them achieve their health goals.
It's that kind of biological detective work that we just don't have time to do. And, even when I practice, we both practice in general practice still. And when we try and apply these principles into the system of a 10-minute appointment, it's essentially very, very, very difficult. And that time that we have and that we've built in our systems of care allows us to really understand that person and apply those principles that we've learned, apply this science of what happens in the human body, in those biological processes that allows us to get the results and find those imbalances.
Correct.
And that's where the data comes in. The real deep data dive is important, not just collecting information, but also the biomarker testing really allows us to kind of, unravel. Unravel. What kind of cases or case presentations stick out to you or conditions that you're like, wow, I didn't realize this personalized medicine approach could really help with this?
So we see a lot of energy dysregulation that is dismissed as normal in the traditional medical system. And what's really amazing about the way we kind of offer health programs at HUM2N is we start with the foundational panel blood test, which is a very comprehensive 150 biomarker blood test. But the way we interpret it is key. So when we're looking at those results, we're looking at those with a kind of more narrow lens, kind of looking at narrow optimal ranges as opposed to a broad medical range. So you start to pick up systemic imbalances or micro imbalances that may not have been detected otherwise. When you do that, you start to see these micronutrient deficiencies that may not have been picked up. You start to see patterns of hormonal imbalances, and then you can start to see patterns of inflammation. And so when you really go and start working with those kind of, when you're looking at it at that detail and start correcting those imbalances, you really start to see results. So get patients like, really kind of tired, needing to take naps during the day, to then feeling fully functional, kind of having kind of 10-hour-long days at work and not feeling tired or fatigued, and really reversing their kind of low energy. I think that's what is really quite remarkable about this type of medicine, because these types of patients would have been dismissed as normal in a traditional medical system.
Yeah, I mean, we've grown up where, in a society where we accept our slow deterioration.
Correct.
And it's part of our aging process. It's normal, right? And as a GP, I'm not equipped with the knowledge and equipped with the tools to investigate and then intervene when anyone comes in with low energy, especially if they're sitting in these wide normal ranges and everything's fine medically, right? And that was really powerful for me as well. I think fatigue, for anyone that's listening that feels like their fatigue has deteriorated a little bit, or feels like they're not getting as much concentration that they'd like, or enough quality time, really it's quality time, that they would like, then this personalized medicine approach is phenomenal. Very quickly, within a matter of 1 to 2 weeks really, of making a difference in time, giving people that quality time through having energy availability. Energy is the currency of existence. And when our energy system's down and our early warning signs go off and our resilience goes down, our ability to focus and pay attention, we get restless, we get agitated, that leads to anxiety, mood goes down, inflammation goes up, dysregulated sleep goes down. All of these interconnected processes, they're knock-on effects. This personalized medicine approach at HUM2N, particularly with the tools we also have, to very quickly put a jetpack on your cellular energy production systems, just means that we get results so quickly, and it's really, really phenomenal. I think you're right. Energy is underspoken about as something that we as a society, we healthcare practitioners can do something about, but it is the currency. I often talk about that kind of energy reserve, like a Duracell battery with my patients. I say, look at yourself like a Duracell battery. When you start to go in that reserve phase, that's when you start to see the early warning signs. The trick is we need to get you out of the reserve, but sometimes you go back in the reserve. So we need to get you consistently out of the reserve. And we need to do that by repleting you. We often talk about stage 1 being repletion. Repletion is giving you the micronutrients, making sure you're absorbing them. And if you're not absorbing them, we give them intravenously. That really helps replete, while we then work on the imbalances behind the scenes on the kind of functional medicine or personalized medicine side, where we're correcting your absorptive capacity across your digestive tract. We're improving your digestive enzyme production, the internal environment to digest and absorb your nutrients and deliver them. And then also helping you understand the impact of your environment, how you're sleeping, how you're responding to stress, your internal stress response, being conscious of it, being aware of it. And, we are yet to talk about the impact it has on diabetes, blood sugar regulation, how much insulin resistance we're seeing, right? We talked about adrenal dysregulation, hormonal dysregulation, stress response, and we are seeing a huge amount of insulin resistance, which we don't even really test for in general practice. We test for the next stage, what is your fasting glucose? If we're lucky, we test for that. But usually we're just testing HbA1c, your 3-month average of glucose. And then we're seeing, okay, that's high. Now we need to do dietary changes. But often one of the important precursors for that is insulin resistance, which is related to being hypervigilant to the environment or overly stimulated, overly stressed. And early warning signs, I would say this to everyone listening: if you feel like something's wrong, there probably is something wrong, okay? And listen to your body and come to health practitioners like us that are equipped with the knowledge and experience to be detectives, to get to the root cause. We're seeing consistently and we did an audit of our patients, a 42% improvement in our patients' quality of life through health, so their global health symptoms within 8 weeks. Some patients, you told me about a patient, an 80% improvement,
80%
in a matter of weeks.
Correct.
80% improvement. And this, when we measure symptoms, we don't just measure symptoms that you're reporting, we ask you questions that you may not even register as symptoms. Okay, so we're globally checking your health. And that's really, really powerful. And that's really our fire. That's what keeps us going as health practitioners, as doctors, to build the system of care that we can get this out to as many people as possible over time, and support other health professionals to understand how to deliver this, how to look at the human body. And that's what we're really pleased to this year launch the Professional Academy as well. And you just did your first online training session where we're doing case-based discussions. We're training other health professionals in how we look at patients. How do we look at our tests? What questions do we ask? What imbalances do we find? What interventions do we prescribe? And what's really remarkable to me is the interventions that we're prescribing, they're safe, they're simple, right? They're nutrients, micronutrients. If we think back to our medical school and being a doctor, how often do we talk about it, putting your GP hat back on? It's hard to do because with this new knowledge that we have, but when we go back to putting that GP hat on, we don't talk about nutrients, micronutrients, right? We're lucky to talk about macronutrients, which is carbs, proteins, fats, but we don't really understand or apply the power of micronutrients. And if we think about how the human body operates, it builds our proteins, hormones, and enzymes that does the cellular processes from those micronutrients that we get from our food, vitamins, minerals, amino acids that we get from our food, or sometimes we create from sunlight, vitamin D. And so for me, that was a revelation. We can have a whole new dispensary of drugs, put the BNF away, and just use vitamins and minerals and supplements of high quality, naturally occurring ingredients that are non-toxic. We don't see toxicity with vitamins if they're made in the right way. You do if they're poor quality supplements, because they have toxins, they have fillers, which are toxic. Yeah. So for me, that was particularly powerful, the power of micronutrients. What are some of the imbalances, let's talk about, that we're seeing in most of our patients? We talked about the stress imbalance. We talked about the energy dysregulation imbalance. We talked a little bit about the digestive tract imbalances that we see. I think just to labor on the digestive tract imbalances, we're seeing a lot of fungal overgrowth in practice as well. And mold toxicity and fungal overgrowth is very, very common. And the root causes of that is antibiotic exposure over time. And interestingly, if someone has sugar cravings, it could also be related to fungal overgrowth, because when you have fungal overgrowth, you desire more carbs. And we're seeing a lot of people with fungal nail infections, but actually they've got systemic internal fungal infection. So you can treat the nail, but if you're not treating the internal system, you're not going to make the progress. And when you have these overgrowth of bacteria or fungi or parasites or pathogens, you're taking away energy because your immune system is trying to deal with that. And also you're creating an environment where you can't properly absorb.
Yeah, so we're seeing a chronic, kind of widespread issue of fungal overgrowth. I think it's being harnessed by our modern diets that are high sugar, high in refined carbs, allowing these kind of pathogens, the fungi, to overgrow in our gastrointestinal tracts. And that's essentially then stealing our kind of energy production, creating a systemic inflammatory response within our body, because the fungal kind of overgrowth kind of triggers these immune mediators to be released into the gut immune tract. So the gut in itself contains like 70% of our immune system, and that's kind of then triggering, what we see kind of systemically. So, some people might see it in their skin, in their scalp as dandruff. Some people may see it in their toenails as kind of fungal toenail, but what that's indicating is systemic fungal overgrowth, and I think that's a really big problem. But, again, simple things that we can do dietary-wise.
How do we test for it?
So there's a couple of ways of testing. So we can either do it on a comprehensive stool test analysis, but the thing with fungi is they're very difficult to culture. So you may still have the symptoms, you may still have it there, but it might not be detectable on a stool test. We can also do an organic acids urine test, and you can see certain markers that would be elevated if there were fungal dysbiosis present. And so those are kind of commonly two ways that we can test for fungal overgrowth.
How would we treat it?
So we can consider good probiotics, so a healthy fungal probiotic like Saccharomyces boulardii, also antifungal kind of herbal antimicrobials. So we've got a good range of different herbal antimicrobials that are really effective at treating fungal overgrowth, but also treating parasites and bacterial overgrowth as well if present. And then also thinking about prescription medications. You know, at the end of the day, we're still doctors, we're GPs, we can prescribe if needed. And, you know, we can think about oral antifungal treatment if needed. And like nystatin is very safe to use. It's not absorbed systemically. So it's really good to help treat fungal overgrowth in the gut, essentially.
Over and above that, ozone therapy as well. You know, so I love using intravenous ozone therapy in practice here in the clinic. I recommend that for my patients now, we're doing it annually, as you know, as part of the annual detox, and it supports detoxification, but also it's really powerful for removing and killing any lower grade bacteria, parasites, pathogens that may be in your bloodstream as well. So I find that really, really effective as well. We talk about the power of mushrooms. You know, mushrooms is growing in terms of its popularity, both from a functional perspective, functional mushrooms, but then also from a kind of mental health perspective as well. If you have functional mushrooms, lion's manes, cordyceps, would that increase if you've got an underlying fungal overgrowth? Do you know anything about the relationship there?
Yeah, so that's a very tricky situation. So some patients with fungal overgrowth may actually notice that medicine, mushroom, mycotherapy can exacerbate symptoms.
It can worsen symptoms.
It can exacerbate symptoms in some people, but in other people, it can work fantastically well because, again, it outcompetes some of the fungal elements that are overgrowing. So there are some fantastic medicinal mushrooms available now, you know, kind of ranging from ones that support your immune system to your stress levels, your mental health. I think it's with anything in kind of holistic medicine or even traditional medicine, you've got to try it to see how it's going to affect your body and see what the results are after trying it. But, you know, I wouldn't be averse to using them for sure because they do have some fantastic properties.
The point that you touched upon there is being doctors, UK trained GPs, and functional medicine or personalized medicine physicians allows us to really navigate traditional disease methodology with a personalized approach, which means that we can really truly tailor the best approach for you. We've been working on creating that integrated care team approach where every patient gets not just one of the doctors working with them, but they also get a dedicated functional nutritionist. Tell us about how powerful that is and why we do that at HUM2N.
So the functional nutrition element, I would say, is really crucial for the success of the health program or the health journey, because ultimately when we're applying the methodology, we're looking at certain dietary changes. So for some people, it could be something simple like going gluten dairy free for a little while. But there are some really other powerful kind of dietary changes that we can implement. So going back to autoimmune conditions, there's a fantastic diet called the autoimmune protocol, but that requires the help and support of having a trained functional nutritionist to guide you through it. And there are other diets, so even when you're thinking about fungal overgrowth, there are specific carbohydrate diets, there are other diets that we can consider that will really help minimize fungal overgrowth. But these diets can be challenging to implement without guidance, but also kind of having that coach, having that support system. So again, taking back to my personal kind of journey, I found having a coach, having a guide really powerful and impactful in making those changes. And so having your functional nutritionist, but they're also there as your coach, as your guide, can really help kind of move the needle with some of the lifestyle practices that you need to implement essentially.
That's right, and you know, make it practical, make it doable for our patients. Every patient is different in terms of the actions they can do, what their home life is like, what their work life is like. And so I found that the ability to have that accountability, but also the support to make it practical and achievable. And it allows us as the doctors to do the strategy in terms of the blood work and the interpretation, and then the functional nutritionists to work together where they can help implement those lifestyle changes, the supplements, and hold them through that journey. And it works really, really well. And then we're lucky because we have curated a suite of therapies here at the flagship which also kind of expedite the jetpacks, I call them, to expedite results based on real understanding of what biological processes we can support. You know, our intravenous nutrition range, very specific formulated IVs, intravenous ozone therapy, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, cryotherapy, all of these work on different biological systems, but we prescribe them to get the results faster for our patients. And I personally see this as the future of the GP centers. This is what, you know, we're working towards here at HUM2N. We see the kind of community care delivered in this prescriptive, scientific, integrated, handheld, but holistic way, because the range and breadth of conditions that we're treating in this methodology and the improvement in quality of life and the prevention of decline, most importantly, is second to none in the practicing medicine I've experienced to date. And in our methodology, we love to use what we call the gut healing protocol as an early intervention, because we see improving digestive function as really, really critical and as a strong foundation to grow from. Talk to us about the gut healing protocol.
As you mentioned, the gut healing protocol is really to improve one's gut health with the aim to then improve systemic health, because we know that gut health is integral to how the rest of the body is functioning. And if you don't have a good, healthy gut, then it's really going to affect your micronutrient absorption, it's going to affect protein, also your macronutrient absorption, protein, carbohydrates, fats. That's going to impact on energy production. It's going to affect how kind of the rest of the inflammatory processes are happening in the body. I spoke about leaky gut earlier, and if there is a leaky gut, that's going to allow kind of food, proteins and toxins to enter our bloodstream and create inflammation. So as kind of one of the very early things that we'll implement is the gut healing protocol. So essentially what we're doing is we're removing some food triggers that may exacerbate a leaky gut. So we know that, for example, there are kind of certain kind of gluten proteins, dairy proteins that may affect the integrity of the gut barrier if it's compromised already. Now, if you've got a strong intact gut barrier, then most people can tolerate gluten, dairy, fine. But if there is any kind of damage to the integrity of the gut barrier, we find that actually removing those foods from the diet for a short period, kind of looking at probably about a month, can really help improve and heal the gut lining. In addition to that, we're thinking about what supplements can actually help repair the lining of the gut. So we have a fantastic supplement called GI Revive, which essentially is giving all the right nutrients that are going to repair the cells essentially lining the gut wall. Also then thinking about how we can support digestion during this. So digestive enzymes, another common supplement that we'll prescribe during the gut healing protocol, and probiotics. So probiotics to really help rebalance the flora of the gut microbiome. We know that certain kind of toxic bacterial species can produce endotoxins that actually further damage the gut barrier. And so again, by replacing the good bacteria into our gut microbiome, we're reducing those bad bacteria that could potentially be further damaging the gut wall. And then lastly, good quality protein powder, because essentially protein is fundamental to any healing journey that we undertake. And so making sure we've got adequate protein on board during this process is really key. And so with our gut healing protocol, we'll give lots of great smoothie recipes to be able to incorporate that protein into smoothies once a day, and also other recipe meal plan ideas that will allow you to stay off the gluten and dairy during that month and kind of make that a bit more straightforward. Now, some people, I do find they may need to give up some other foods as well to really encourage gut repair, but that's normally done on a personalised basis. So every kind of, you know, even though it is technically called a protocol, everything we do is personalised to the patient. So we'll always have a consultation first and then recommend the supplements based on the kind of needs and kind of concerns the patient has.
We've seen the vast impact that working in this way, the digestion first way, has on energy, vitality, immunity, inflammation, hormonal balance as well. And so that's why we like to go there first. We also know that everyone has, over time, gut dysfunction because the environment and the foods that we have are very toxic. You know, they're sprayed with preservatives, the soil that they're grown have herbicides and pesticides. And so all of these additional synthetic chemicals break down the integrity of our gut lining as well. So, and the other thing to bear in mind is that we drive immune responses to things that we're overexposed to. And we grew up on cow's milk, you know, and on Hovis bread, right? You know, jam sandwiches. And so common things are common. As we get exposed to more things over time, we drive more of an immune response. So if you give the digestive tract a little rest from those common things while you repair the gut junctions, 10 out of 10 patients find an improvement very, very quickly. And that's why we've made this a central part of our methodology. Tell us about the addition of the finger prick test that we're introducing with the gut healing box, which we're excited to be launching early 2024.
So we're launching a fantastic gut barrier panel, kind of the first of its kind really, because there isn't really that great a test out there that's really looking for a leaky gut or being able to, you know, we're not able to really diagnose a leaky gut. We assume one has it based on their symptoms and their presentation. With this gut barrier panel, we can really test for this now. So we're looking at certain markers that may indicate the increased likelihood of there being a leaky gut present. So LPS is one of those markers.
What's LPS?
So LPS stands for lipopolysaccharides. So I mentioned the endotoxin that's produced by certain bacterial species. So LPS is one of those endotoxins. Okay. And so
when you say endotoxins, why are they toxic? What do they go on to do?
So they go on to cause inflammation and they cause damage, and they create this kind of oxidative stress within the environment. So oxidative stress is where essentially we're creating stress within the cell, within our mitochondria. So it's further damaging the cell wall, damaging our mitochondria, affecting our cell's ability to produce energy, or ATP. And we know that ATP is our life force when it comes to cellular health. And we need our mitochondria to be functioning well in order to produce ATP. If we're having oxidative stress, we're damaging our mitochondria directly and therefore affecting our ability to produce ATP or energy. And over time, this oxidative stress damages cells. It can lead to even kind of precancerous cell formation. It eventually can be a point of no return when it comes to cellular damage and DNA damage. And so what we want to do is reduce oxidative stress, but at the same time, look at ways of actually reducing it. So thinking about the antioxidant nutrients, thinking about kind of all the lovely, colourful fruits, vegetables that we can have in our diet that are kind of filled with polyphenols, that are natural antioxidants, but also thinking about supplement antioxidants as well, and therapies.
So it measures LPS. Anything else that it measures?
We're also looking at Candida. So we spoke at length about fungal overgrowth. Fungi can damage our gut barrier. So we're looking for the presence of Candida antibodies. We're also looking at something called zonulin. So zonulin is the kind of tight junction, essentially. It's one of those proteins that are keeping the cells together. And we know that if zonulin is kind of, if that's broken down, that is a sign of leaky gut, because you know you're breaking down those tight junctions between the cells. And so if you can measure zonulin, and if it's elevated, then that's often a sign that there could be a leaky gut present. There is evidence to show that, you know, for example, gluten can be a direct kind of damaging factor to zonulin proteins. So it's, really good that we can measure that on the gut barrier.
Zonulin, LPS, Candida fungi as well.
Yes.
And is there occludin as well on the test?
Occludin as well.
Okay, so occludin is another protein?
Another protein, another tight junction protein. So again, a fantastic measure of whether there's leaky gut.
So, I mean, we believe in digestive health as being so important that we've developed this test as part of this gut healing box. And in the program that we're launching early 2024, we're making this type of medicine more accessible. Okay, so start with this gut healing box, which will be a finger prick test, will contain a functional nutrition consultation. So once you get the results of that, you'll speak to our nutritionist. They'll prescribe you the right gut healing box of supplements and nutrition strategy, and start to experience health differently. How have you found personalized medicine helping for hormonal disorders?
As with anything, when we look at what are the root causes that lead to hormonal issues, it's again mind-blowing, because when we think about certain hormone-driven conditions like fibroids, for example, in women, endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, it's very much, again, this is your diagnosis, this is how we're going to treat it, or not treat it in some cases. We're not really applying that root cause methodology of what actually led to those hormone conditions in the first place. And we see a lot of estrogen dominance in our women, especially kind of our young middle-aged females. We see a lot of estrogen dominance driving some of these hormone-related disorders. And when you try and delve deeper into estrogen dominance, you start to learn again how intricate the human body is in terms of how our gut health is vital for detoxifying estrogen, how our liver is vital for detoxifying estrogen, how we need to essentially have all of our hypothalamus pituitary axis functioning well in order for our hormones to be balanced. And then also thinking about our genetics as well. So do we have the right genes in order to be able to process and detox hormones effectively? When we're thinking about things like estrogen dominance and you start to dig deeper, you can actually start to unpick why these hormone imbalances are occurring. When you treat that at the root cause, it helps these conditions improve.
Talk to us about some of the conditions and the symptoms that estrogen dominance presents with.
Yeah, so estrogen dominance can be, again, like a spectrum. So, on the end scale, you have your actual diagnosed medical conditions like fibroids, for example, endometriosis,
Polycystic ovaries.
Polycystic ovaries. Yeah. But when it first starts, it could just present with maybe a bit of heavy periods, for example, or other hormonal signs and symptoms.
Premenstrual syndrome, so symptoms,
syndrome.
before, around the time of the menses, just before,
Exactly.
For a period of time, we were taught that that's not real. That those aren't real symptoms, but many women were reporting it, and in society we're like, no, that's not real. But actually, it is real. Estrogen dominance leads to emotional ability in your ability to handle stress, in the way you might feel more emotional, more tearful. It's commonly reported, and we know that in the menopause, when you get a depletion of estrogen, women start to report some kind of mood changes as well. So PMS is real. And how common is estrogen dominance? I know how much we're seeing it. It's, I would say, 70% of the blood tests that we're doing, and we've done thousands of patients of blood tests. 70% of women have estrogen dominance.
It's not just women, it's men as well. We're seeing raised estrogen in men as well.
That's right. And I worked with a famous athlete, Conor Ben, and found that he had estrogen dominance. We did his gene testing, and he has the genes, which means he can't process estrogens. And we helped him clear his name from a drug charge related to clomiphene, which is a hormone designed to increase estrogen. That's a separate story, but for me that's particularly fascinating, the power of personalized medicine. But yes, you're right, 70%, 7 out of 10 of our patients at least have an imbalance, higher amount of estrogen than they should have compared to progesterone, both in men and in women. And for men, the types of symptoms you're talking about, gynecomastia, also emotional lability as well. Any other symptoms they should be thinking about?
Also, when you see that high estrogen, you typically see low testosterone with it. So you might start to see signs and symptoms of low testosterone.
Such as?
A libido being affected, erectile dysfunction, energy, muscle kind of health, muscle optimization. So
the ability to put on muscle, right?
Yeah, ability to put on muscle, performance. So, a wide range of symptoms again.
And I'll just say at this point, don't fall into the trap to go after testosterone as a solution. Don't fall into the trap of going after a hormone for a solution. Work upstream, find the root cause, work with us, find the root cause, because there's a lot of clinics now that are, and a lot of services that are just going for the solution, testosterone. But any hormone that you give from the outside dysregulates your ability to create that hormone naturally. And the way hormones work, you give something else downstream is affected from it as well. If you're not fixing the root cause, you're not getting to long-term health. And the other thing to kind of bring into this factor, I'm seeing a lot of low adrenals with low testosterone. We see that, don't we? Low DHEA, low cortisol, low testosterone as well. So it's not always the detoxification pathway in the liver or the hormonal recycling. It can also be coming from the hyperstimulation of the adrenal axis. And this is where coming to experts like us, where we're looking holistically at how your hormones are designed to work across what Nirusha mentioned, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal thyroid sex hormone axis, which is the complete balance of hormones. That's how you're getting the real long-term solution and short-term solution, the quickest way to feel better.
The other thing I'm noticing as well is insulin resistance and that's connection to poor hormone metabolism. Because we know that if you're building up body fats, we know a lot of our patients come to us with body composition issues. Those fat cells can also modulate estrogen and can increase estrogen levels, and that can decline testosterone. So, also thinking about kind of metabolic health, where it's really important for hormonal health as well.
Blood sugar regulation, and how we're responding to it, and the stress impact related to that as well. And often our patients, they get a blood glucose monitor if we're seeing signs of that, and they're learning what foods they're responding to. They're learning about the environmental impact. They're learning the types of alcohol that is affecting their blood sugar, and then they're becoming more activated. That's really nice. In this methodology, it's not a prescription that we give our patients. It's a journey that we handhold them through to becoming ambassadors for their own health, ambassadors for their quality of life, that they can impact and give to their children, give to their loved ones. And ripples becomes waves with health, as you've been on that journey, where you personally have, and all our patients go on that journey with us, where they develop their own toolbox to navigate life with, because life is up and down, and we have different environmental things that go on, and we want to pull out the right tools at the right times. And that's really what's been really special about this approach as well. Women's health, I'm hearing that personalized medicine has a huge role to play in women's hormonal health. And what about at the time of the menopause or coming into the menopause? There's a lot of awareness around this at the moment. Can personalized medicine help, or should we go straight to bioidentical hormone replacement therapy?
Personalised medicine can do so much. There's so many kind of nutrient supports available for premenopausal, postmenopausal women, and also thinking about herbal supports as well. So there are certain herbs that can be really impactful in the menopause, perimenopause period. And also we need to remember that bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, or even traditional hormone replacement therapy, may not be suitable for everybody. If you've got certain genetic tendencies that don't allow you to detoxify estrogen effectively, it may not be the safest solution for you, because then you could end up essentially creating more toxic estrogen metabolites that can actually damage DNA and kind of create stress within the body.
So is there a relationship between breast cancer and these estrogen detoxification pathways?
Absolutely, yes. We know that there are certain types of breast cancer connected to estrogen receptors, but also connected to estrogen detoxification. And there's one of the tests that we do on our patients is the Dutch test. It's a dried hormone urine test, and in that we can actually measure different estrogen metabolites. And we know that there are certain protective types of estrogen, so like 2-OHE1, for example, is a really protective estrogen. But then there's 16-OHE1 and 4-OHE1. Those are two what I would call toxic estrogen metabolites. And some women, due to various different reasons, it could be environmental reasons or genetic reasons, produce more of the toxic estrogen metabolites. And that can damage our cells, damage our DNA, and actually be precancerous for some people.
Creating hormonal balance, in summary, is really important, and can be done quite easily by looking at your personalized makeup on how you recycle and what is your current balance of your hormones. Through testing, through the personalized medicine-based, the foundational health program, we can very quickly understand your hormonal balance, right? And reduce your risk long-term, but create hormonal symphony in the short run, which is really, really nice. The types of conditions that can help: polycystic ovaries, fibroids, endometriosis, any hormonal dysregulated condition, this methodology can help with. And then also for men that have low testosterone, right? And you want to dig a bit deeper. Maybe you're not building the muscle mass that you'd like. Maybe you've got gynecomastia. There are some underlying imbalances that traditional medicine is not looking at, that we can detect and support those processes to work better, to solve those issues very quickly. Narusha, we talked a little bit earlier about how revealing it's been for us as doctors to understand and get to the root cause of autoimmunity, which is this dysregulated, overactivated immune response. I often talk about this. 80s and 90s medicine was about fat, it was about heart attacks, strokes, right? And then 2000s and 2010s became about blood sugar regulation, diabetes, the microvascular complications, the leaky blood vessels, and the systemic effect of having poor blood sugar control. I believe that since the onset of COVID, it's about the new currency of healthcare is inflammation and autoimmunity. We're at this point in time now where we can explain for the first time in our life as doctors, as healthcare professionals, we can start to really explain autoimmunity, because we were never trained to understand why do people get these autoimmune conditions? Where do they come from? There were some kind of loose links that would say, okay, maybe it's this or this, but there was never, this is why you've got this autoinflammatory bowel disease, rheumatoid arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, psoriasis, eczema, dermatitis. All of these are autoimmune conditions that we commonly see that so many of the population are suffering with symptom management. And you talked about it with your daughter. You had it yourself with the Hashimoto's thyroiditis. We're not explaining in traditional medicine where it's come from, and therefore we're not going to be able to treat it or create the internal balance where your immune system is more balanced and stopping it from overreacting. This personalized medicine has now been able to explain it. It's, for me, it is one of the most powerful areas of this personalized medicine-based approach. And really simply understanding our immune system reacts to things that it finds toxic. So have we got toxic overload, or is our ability to process those toxins impaired? And that's why the digestive tract is so important, because it's kilometers of surface area that's designed to process the external environment. And our environments are becoming more toxic. The food that we're eating is more toxic. The hyperstimulation is also dysregulating a healthy immune response, where we can get into a deep regenerative sleep, where we produce those natural killer cells, where we produce T cells from our thymus gland, and we mount a healthy immune response, and stem cells from our bone marrow. And we're seeing now, there's a study recently showing that there's been a 300% rise in colorectal cancer in less than 50-year-olds. Okay, this is a process that happens, that doesn't happen overnight. It's starting with early warning signs and dysregulated processes. There is an 80% rise in cancer in less than 50-year-olds on average in the Western world. But that's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And this is, the role of this personalized medicine looks at those underlying pathways and processes that process toxins and that external environment that drives those cancerous or those changes that we've been talking about a lot. We talk about the kind of oxidative stress. We've been talking about the precancerous changes, the DNA repair mechanisms. All of those are directly related to cancerous changes. We went from autoimmunity to cancer, but it is on the spectrum, isn't it?
It is on the spectrum.
It's that same sort of kind of series of processes that become dysregulated and eventually lead to that disease state. Should we accept those early warning signs, those kind of rashes that come up, the joint swellings, bit of psoriasis, bit of alopecia, all of these what we call autoimmune or inflammatory symptoms? Should we accept that?
Absolutely not, because there is a root cause, there is a driving factor. And if we dig deep, we can find it. And it often starts in the gut. We work on fixing the gut, sorting out a leaky gut. That will reduce systemic inflammation, but at the same time modulating our inflammatory response. We've got some fantastic dietary strategies, supplement strategies, therapies that can really help improve our immune function, reduce inflammation, because I would say inflammation is the biggest silent root cause for any chronic disease, whether we're thinking about heart disease, autoimmunity, even kind of skin issues, we're thinking about inflammation as a silent root cause. And I would say pretty much every single person has a degree of inflammation. It's when that inflammation goes out of control. We all need a little bit of inflammation because it helps create our healthy immune function. But too much inflammation is a bad thing. And so reducing inflammation, looking at the right strategies of how we do that. What foods should we be eating? Often it's not a case about cutting foods out, it's about putting foods back in. We should all be aiming to eat 5 to 7 portions of colourful fruits and vegetables a day. We should be all having 40 different plant varieties a week to really try and give us that diversity of our gut microbiome, but also give us the right antioxidant nutrients, the polyphenols that we need to help support our inflammation and reduce kind of excess inflammation.
What are some of your favourite supplements to support?
Really thinking about the micronutrients, all the vitamins like vitamin A, D, C, E, all fantastic at supporting immune function, but then also thinking about other what I call bioflavonoid type supplements, like quercetin, for example, is fantastic for immune function and allergies. Other things like resveratrol, curcumin, all fantastic immune modulating supplements.
Yeah, one of my favourite ones, we've got this Peacemaker that contains a lot of those great ingredients for helping as a natural anti-inflammatory.
Exactly.
Yeah. We talked about some of the early warning sign symptoms that your immune system is overactivated, those rashes that might come up and down, a little bit of hair loss. It can be so broad, kind of, the range of symptoms that you have. But, when you have a consultation with our team, we'll be able to kind of understand that a bit better. Let's go on to talk about diagnosed autoimmune conditions and whether this process of personalized medicine at HUM2N can help. We're talking about established inflammatory disease, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, rheumatoid arthritis. Can this approach help?
100%. There's no such thing as curing an autoimmune disease. So unfortunately, if you do get diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, that is a diagnosis. But what we can do is reverse it or put it into remission so that you're symptom-free and that autoimmune process is not happening within the body. Your immune system is not attacking your organs or your cells internally. And identifying, again, what the root causes are is what's going to help then reduce that autoimmune process. So if we take IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, for example, there may be certain food triggers that are stimulating the immune system.
Lo and behold, food could be driving inflammatory bowel disease.
It can be.
Traditional doctors, why do we not think of that? It's food that goes into our digestive tract. We do not talk about the relationship between food and then a breakdown of our tissue and an immune response activated within the digestive tract, our colon, right? And our small intestine. It is, when we have this hat on, it now becomes like, what are we even thinking? Yeah. But sorry, I interrupted you there.
No problem. So food triggers, the best way to identify food triggers, there isn't unfortunately an easy test to do, is to do an elimination diet. So with any autoimmune condition, I would look for food triggers first and foremost. Because, it could be something simple like dairy, for example, but it could be something less obvious. So, there are immune triggers in certain vegetables, like nightshade vegetables, for example. And you would only know that.
What is a nightshade vegetable?
Yeah, so things like aubergines, tomatoes, peppers are nightshade vegetables.
So they can actually be a protagonist
Correct.
For an inflammatory process in IBD.
Yeah,
okay.
But you would only know that if you did a trial where you actually eliminated that food for a period of 3 to 4 weeks. So it takes your immune response about 3 weeks.
So my initial reaction and thought is, as a patient, will this take a long time just using that methodology?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No, because think about how long you may end up suffering or struggling with that condition for, because an autoimmune condition is lifelong. And so if you can identify what your triggers are early on, it can reduce that disease progression, disease severity. Obviously, the best time to work with autoimmunity is near diagnosis. So soon after a diagnosis is made is the best time to intervene, because that's when you're most likely to have success with going into remission. But if we're thinking about an elimination diet, you're doing that for 3 to 4 weeks and then introducing the foods back in one by one to see how your immune system reacts.
Is there any tests or things that can speed things up?
Yeah, absolutely. So all the kind of supportive supplements and therapies that we offer some fantastic immune supporting supplements. So Peacemaker is one of those, thinking about also other anti-inflammatory nutrients like omega-3 fatty acids, for example, really great at modulating the immune system. And then therapy, so we talked about ozone therapy being fantastic. Also the supportive nutrients, so the IV nutrients, so especially when you're thinking about an inflammatory bowel condition, your digestion absorption of nutrients is going to be severely impaired. So the best way to replace that in the short term would be through IV nutrition. So IV nutritional support strategies, hyperbaric oxygen chambers, so all these factors can help support immune system in the short run. And then in the long run, we're talking about working on the diet, working on lifestyle. Yeah, and provide the environment for self-healing. Correct, yeah. Right, and we want to get people out of that reserve so that they can start self-healing better. Now, with using therapies alongside the personalized medicine approach, working with the functional nutritionists, working with the doctors, the right supplements and nutrition strategy, and using the therapies jetpacks to get you out of the reserve really helps. I would just add a note to that just from experience of working with autoimmune conditions, we don't tend to tinker or make recommendations to tinker with the traditional medical approach. So the biological agents that they continue on, maybe the immune suppressant agents that they will need during times of acute flares, we don't interfere with that. Absolutely. And we work alongside the traditional rheumatological or immune secondary care specialists to provide
the functional foundational approach to support them and work alongside the traditional GP's approach as well. So we want to make that really clear for people that are listening in. And also what I found is that when someone is in an acute flare, that's not the right time to be doing some of the therapies, but definitely to be doing the medical approach behind the scenes, understand the relationship between environment, nutrition, stress, sleep, etc., and working on those and those underlying pathways, food, during that time. But when someone comes out of that acute flare, it's a great time to work on creating the environment, using the therapies to create the self-healing environment, particularly hyperbaric oxygen therapy for any tissue breakdown like ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, where the inflammation has got so bad you're developing ulcers and craters within the small intestinal wall that are super painful, that will bleed a little bit, that will create mucus, the inflammatory response that you'll see in your stool. That is the time that we're using those therapies. Hyperbaric oxygen will perfuse the tissue with oxygen, the most powerful nutrient, but also improve the blood supply. Using the IV micronutrients so that you're delivering the nutrients so that the repair can start to happen. We know hyperbaric oxygen therapy helps wounds that don't heal very well. And so I love to use it with our patients that have ulcerative colitis and Crohn's, because you can get deep into the tissue through the hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Intravenous ozone therapy I love as well, but I'd use that in remission because it is a powerful hormetic stressor. It gives you oxidative stress. And in doing so, if you're already acutely inflamed, it will exacerbate that acute inflammation in the short term. But if you're chronically, it will give you a little stressor, but then the response in your body is to create powerful antioxidants. We touched upon some of those: alpha lipoic acid, glutathione, superoxide dismutase is activated. These are really powerful antioxidants that will fight the oxidative stress. And also, if one of the drivers of an immune response is low-grade virus, parasites, bacteria that are overgrowing, it will kill those as well. Also, improves the health of mitochondria. Mitochondrial biogenesis, we touched upon earlier, how oxidative stress affects mitochondria. Now in personalized medicine, longevity medicine, we really understand the role of mitochondria and our ability to replace our mitochondria, a process called mitophagy, like autophagy, which is the self-renewal of cells as they get older. Our ability to replace them is very important. Same thing for mitochondria. So ozone, for me, is the most powerful therapy at HUM2N to be able to improve mitochondrial biogenesis, the health of the mitochondria, the health of mitochondrial DNA, and to get them to work better. So it works in multiple mechanisms that will help autoimmunity. Eczema. You had a direct experience with your daughter, but we've seen lots of patients have remarkable results with an internal approach to eczema, looking at the internal environment. That's the big takeaway here. The outside symptoms come from the inside. Okay, the internal balance is the starting point to optimal health and the journey towards getting over those inflammatory conditions, be it eczema, dermatitis, even psoriasis, we're seeing significant improvement in. But it is a lifelong approach. It's not something that's curative. It's not a drug that you take and it's a miracle drug, but it's a miracle approach that you will learn working with HUM2N and the integrated care team in our methodology. Any other key autoimmune conditions that come to mind?
MS.
Multiple sclerosis, very interesting. Yeah,
that's very
talk to us about that.
So multiple sclerosis is a unique type of autoimmune condition because you're attacking your nervous system. Your immune system is attacking your nervous system. And so what is quite remarkable from a functional approach is that there's evidence to show that certain dietary factors can really help improve that neurodegenerative process that's happening. So a ketogenic diet works fantastically for any type of nerve degeneration or nervous system related condition.
Why is that?
The rest of our body often uses glucose as our fuel, but our brain particularly thrives off using ketones as the primary source of fuel. In modern day diets, we're not making ketones because we're eating lots of carbohydrates, and that's causing glucose as our main primary source of energy. In order to produce ketones as our primary source of energy, we need to be eating high fat and potentially no carb or very, very low carb diets. That's how we produce ketones. Obviously, that's not the right approach for everybody, but when it comes to certain neurodegenerative conditions, especially things like MS, we find that replacing your primary fuel source with ketones really improves your nerve healing capacity or your neuron healing capacity. And so that's kind of a fantastic dietary approach. The other thing we're seeing a lot of in functional medicine is heavy metals toxicity.
Okay.
And there's a strong connection between mercury toxicity and the development of MS.
Just MS or neurodegenerative processes?
Neurodegenerative processes.
Other
in
neurodegenerative processes such as?
Such as even dementia. Yeah. A past colleague of mine had dental amalgams put in before she got married. Her wedding was kind of a month away. She was moving abroad. She had to have dental work done before going. They put 3 dental amalgams into her mouth, and we know that kind of the silver amalgams that they use contain heavy metals like nickel and mercury. Within a month of those amalgams going in, she started developing MS symptoms. And it was that mercury toxicity from those amalgams that created that immune response in her body. She went through a self-healing journey, removing amalgams, but it has to be done in a safe and proper way. So you need to go to the right dentist who knows how to address these amalgams in a smart way. They call it smart dentistry.
Or biological dentistry.
Biological dentistry. And then looking at how you then detoxify heavy metals. So you can't detoxify heavy metals unless the rest of your physiology, your biochemistry is working effectively. Because what can happen is if you start to try and detox heavy metals, it essentially can dump metals elsewhere in your body, particularly your brain. So actually detoxing in a not safe way can be more harmful than good. So it's really important to work with a trained functional medicine practitioner or doctor who knows how to safely and effectively detox in order to kind of reduce this kind of heavy metal burden from the body. But we're seeing kind of fantastic results. So if you do have any levels of mercury toxicity and you're able to detox that, then you can see fantastic improvements in certain autoimmune conditions, particularly MS and neurodegenerative conditions.
I'm seeing NAD plus being actually really helpful with hyperbaric oxygen therapy for patients with MS for symptom reduction. And one of my MS patients, she is getting great results with cognitive clarity that she felt she hasn't had for a long time. Although a lot of patients report that generally with NAD+, but particularly with MS patients, I've seen that's a really helpful tool as well. There's a doctor in America, Dr. Terry Walls, is it, that's written a book about reducing her own MS symptoms and treating her MS through a personalized medicine or functional medicine based approach. And it's those principles that we're applying here at Human or functional medicine, getting to the root cause, understanding the human body, how it's interconnected and the systems are working together, creating that internal balance, providing the raw material in a way that the human body can take it, absorb it, to support those underlying individual imbalances, to correct them and create the ability to self-regulate, self-heal, and to feel health, and to buy time, we talked about earlier, that quality of life. Interestingly also, we talked about inflammatory bowel disease, but the association it has with spinal conditions and joint conditions such as ankylosing spondylitis and rheumatoid arthritis. We can explain that through this functional medicine or this personalized medicine based approach, and we can help reduce flares. I would just say that the longer you've had these conditions, the more structural damage you've got, a structural damage or scarring of tissue, this approach cannot help with, but it can help reduce the progression of disease we talked about, and also decrease remissions.
And there's a really strong connection between gut health and the development of ankylosing spondylitis. So we know that there's a particular bacterial species called Klebsiella that is, again, kind of routine in a lot of people's gut microbiomes, that in certain people's Klebsiella is overgrown, it can trigger immune-related symptoms. So again, identifying whether Klebsiella is present, treating it, can actually really help reduce kind of the severity and the progression of ankylosing spondylitis.
Okay. Narusha, we're going to talk a little bit about energy. We touched upon it in this great conversation earlier. I'm seeing more and more patients coming in with post-viral fatigue, young patients coming in with, after having received COVID, particularly, that they said they've not felt the same after having COVID a couple of years ago, but the predominant symptom is energy. Plus we see the other syndrome a lot, the chronic fatigue syndrome, another syndrome that's not explained by traditional medicine. Does personalized medicine help with energy dysregulation from this kind of inflammatory process perspective?
Yeah, because often, again, it's multifactorial.
That's right.
So systemic inflammation could be one factor. where I see a lot of mitochondrial disturbance in the fatiguing syndromes, so particularly chronic fatigue, chronic viral fatigue, fibromyalgia. We see a lot of mitochondrial dysfunction, so where our mitochondria are not functioning effectively to produce ADP for energy. And there's several factors that can affect our mitochondria, and it's been fascinating for me because it's like been going back to the first and second year of med school where you learnt the Krebs cycle, or the citric acid cycle, and actually applying that now in everyday medicine is really fascinating because you can really kind of break down each step of that cycle and kind of identify where the imbalances could be happening or where the blockers could be happening. So when we're thinking about kind of energy production, so you need your macronutrients, you need your proteins, fats, carbohydrates, but then you also need your micronutrients in order to be able to metabolize those effectively. And what I find is fascinating is that there's several steps in the citric acid cycle, and if there's just kind of dysfunction or if there's one pathway that's not functioning effectively, it can really downregulate the whole of the mitochondria and how kind of ATP is produced. And there are certain micronutrients that we're finding are kind of critical for mitochondrial function, so B vitamins, for example, so particularly things like B3 or NAD. So again, NAD plus is a fantastic tool at restoring mitochondrial function, but also kind of thinking about other important minerals like magnesium, iron, zinc. All of these things are really, really key. And if we're not digesting, absorbing our nutrients effectively, so if we've got poor gut health, if we've got low stomach acid, and we're not absorbing our nutrients, it can really start to affect our cellular energy production. And then we have things like toxicities that actually then can block these steps as well. So you've got heavy metals, for example, lead, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, all of these heavy metals that can go into the cell and actually block the pathway of the mitochondria. So it's really kind of fascinating when you start to unpick the mitochondria and how it functions in more detail. And we offer a fantastic test. So we do an organic acids urine test that can measure these organic acids that are kind of being produced through various different biochemical pathways in the body. And the mitochondrial pathways are one of those. So by measuring organic acids, we can then look at the mitochondrial function in more detail and actually help improve mitochondrial function. And then thinking about the other drivers, so we see a lot of chronic viral infections. We don't know exactly the science behind this, but we know that kind of COVID, for example, can re-trigger certain viruses that we may have had previously, like Epstein-Barr virus, cytomegalovirus. These can then create a chronic viral burden on our body, keeping our immune system overactivated. And so then going back and again identifying, whether these persistent viral infections are present and working on the immune system at reducing that firstly reducing the viral load and also helping our immune system kind of fight these viruses can be really, really impactful when we're thinking about the fatiguing conditions.
And do you find that starting with the foundational bloods and then moving on as we do a helpful process?
Oh, 100%, because the foundation bloods give you a deep insight into all the systems of the body. So we're looking at kind of all the major organs. We're looking at kidney health, liver health, bone health, but also certain micronutrients like B12, folic acid, vitamin D, and we're checking magnesium. So we're seeing kind of from a micronutrient level, minerals perspective, but also from an organ perspective, how are we functioning and how we can improve that first, because we need to sort out the foundations first, which is why it's called the foundational panel, and then we can move on to advanced functional testing if and when needed. But for most patients, I find that often just doing the foundational panel is sufficient because we get so much from that one report. And another really kind of thing that I'm seeing a lot of is methylation issues. So methylation, again, is a really important biochemical process that's happening within pretty much every single cell of our body. It's critical for DNA repair, cellular regeneration, but also things like neurotransmitter production, healthy detoxification. And a lot of people don't have the right genes in order to methylate effectively.
4 in 10?
Yeah, 4 in 10.
Yeah, 4 in 10 people don't. Yeah, that's right.
So
40%, it's a significant
that's quite
amount.
A significant amount. And what we're finding is that there's certain types of B vitamins, for example, the B12, the folic acid. If you're not getting it in the right type, then that's going to affect your methylation even more. So when we identify if there could be a methylation defect, you know, we then can give the right type of B12 and folic acid in order to help overcome and improve methylation. And interesting, you mentioned kind of the foundational panel, because that again is a key indicator. So often when we see high levels of B12, we're thinking, oh, maybe that patient is getting too much B12, but actually it could be still a functional B12 deficiency, because they may not be processing and utilizing that B12. So it's sitting in their bloodstream, but the cell is actually deprived of B12.
And with that, we see low folate
Yeah.
and high homocysteine. And
High
that's why we
homocysteine.
test that pathway of methylation without having to spend on a genetic methylation test.
Exactly.
We're getting an idea if you've got a methylation issue straight from the foundational panel. You know, that's really, really fascinating that we are able to start to explain, go a bit deeper. And as you were talking, I was thinking of a detective coming to a crime scene. Right?
Yeah.
When you come to a crime scene, you tape off the area and you get a lay of the land. You don't go straight to where the crime took place, because you might miss things. And this is in our approach at HUM2N, of the years of expertise and knowledge and experience we have in our team in delivering personalized medicine. We've been able to create an approach that works reproducibly, that looks at the lay of the land first. That's very important, and then can go in deeper if we need to go in deeper. You might find other approaches out there that go straight into deep diagnostic testing that looks at metabolomics or organic acid testing first, and then gives you 7 or 6 or 5 or 3 tests to do that are real deeper tests. For me, that's a warning sign that you should respond to and say, actually, does this health practitioner or this approach look at the lay of the land? Are they competent and experienced to be able to look at the medical organs as well as the cellular systems and processes that go on? And you know, that's what makes HUM2N very unique in the way we deliver our approach. By looking at the lay of the land and being able to look forensically, we're able to get superior results faster and more reproducibly to a whole range of health conditions and states. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you and spending time with you. I'm sure you guys are going to ask for more time with Dr. Narusha on Humans at HUM2N. We're definitely going to be continuing the conversation. So much more to talk about as we take on the traditional approach to healthcare and raise the importance of this personalized approach that can sit alongside general practice and secondary care, specialist care. And as we're on a journey to help as many patients as we can improve their health, stave off the progression to disease, and improve quality of life.
Thank you for having me.